What's going on, everybody? Good Monday morning. We made it to the start of another week, but we're not quite done with the events of last week yet. NFL Sunday may have come and gone, but the Seahawks have yet to go. We have our game still. Playing it in about 8 hours, a little more than 8 hours. We're going to be kicking off at home, hosting the Denver Broncos, who just so happen to have our former quarterback. And that is something I don't need to go into detail about because everyone's been talking about it. We all know. I'm not breaking news to anybody that Russell Wilson is now a Denver Bronco. We all know. We know what it means. We know the ramifications there. We all have our different takes on it. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people are indifferent. But it's here. And this is probably going to be the most interesting game the Seahawks play this year. It's going to be really hard to top it. In order for us to top it, we'd have to make the playoffs and possibly even go on a little bit of a run. Not likely. Just going to put that out there right now. Good luck with that. So, odds are good the season is peaking in week one, which doesn't happen often, and it's not really a good thing, but it is what it is, and sometimes the only way up is down. So, I'm down with it. If this goes to a good place, which I think we're on the right track of it potentially going to a good place, so be it. All right, so tonight there's obviously a lot of storylines going on here, a lot of interesting things that are going to be hard to encapsulate just talking about the game, right? There's stuff going on in this game that can't be quantified with any stats or numbers or on paper matchups. There's some stuff going on here that probably just can't be quantified until the game starts. How is Wilson going to handle playing his former team? How is he going to handle the crowd? How is the crowd going to handle him? How is Pete Carroll going to handle his former quarterback, a guy who he coached for 10 years? How are these things going to come together? How is this game filled with all these storylines going to play out? There's just some stuff that you can't really analyze. You just have to say it's going to have an effect, but you don't really know what that effect is going to be. So I'll admit that right off the bat. I'm going to talk about this game the best that I can. I'm going to talk about it from a place of understanding that these are still men. These are still football playing men. They're not magical beings. They're not superheroes. They bleed like the rest of us. And at the end of the day, they can't be imbued with superpowers just because of the circumstances. But I understand. There's some stuff in this game that you simply cannot account for. So, when the Seahawks are on offense, I'll start there. It's going to be all about running the ball. And it's been a while since we've been able to say that. This is the first year in a while where I've looked at our personnel, looked at our running backs in particular, looked at our quarterback and said, yeah, we need to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands as much as possible, right? It's very different from previous years, but that's the case. And you guys know me. I am not the biggest fan in the world of running the ball. I think that the dependence on running the ball is a relic of an older era of football. I think that the fact that you have seen the last couple teams that have won the Super Bowl have very, very substandard running games proves that. But I also always say your goal in the NFL is to find what your team does best and then do that. If it's running the ball, it's running the ball. If it's passing the ball, it's passing the ball. If it's running the Tim Tebow jump pass on every play or double reverse wide receiver passes every play or the Philly special every play, then do that. And I can honestly say, looking at this team and this game in particular, running the ball should be the best thing we can do. The strong area of Denver's front seven is mostly in their edge players. They have Randy Gregory, who they just gave a bunch of money. Not 100% healthy, but I think he's going to play. And Bradley Chubb, who has been hot and cold so far in his NFL career, but has proven to be capable of being very destructive off the edge. Other than that, their defensive line is okay, but they lost Shelby Harris. They added DJ Jones, and he's decent. He's been a 49er for the last several years, so we're familiar. But I don't see anything on that defensive line that is terrifying to me. Shelby Harris was probably their best player, and now he's here. 7.5 sacks from a 3-4 end does not come easy most of the time. So I don't fear that defensive line that much. And their inside linebacker spot, they're already thin. They're missing Jewel, who is going to be one of their starters, and that leaves them thin in that area. They are not feeling, at least if I were a Broncos fan, I wouldn't be feeling great about those inside linebackers. So I look at that and I go, we should be able to run the ball, and we should be able to run the ball up the gut, which not really what I'm looking to do with Rashad Penny most of the time. But he proved last year he could do it. We did it a lot with him last year, and he was very effective. So if that's what we got to do, then it is what it is. Just block in a straight line and let Penny do what he did in the second half, or last third, let's say, of the season last year. The final third of the season. Run the ball, make life easy for Geno, and potentially you can make good things happen from there. And the key to allowing that is to prevent negative plays. Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, I know this is your first NFL game, but we need no penalties, or very few penalties. We need a clean game from the whole offense. I'm focused on those two guys in particular because they're rookies, but we can't have holdings, false starts. We can't have plays that move us backwards, because that puts you in 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 16, 3rd and 13. And when you get into those situations, you can't run the ball. And often, especially when Geno Smith is your quarterback, you end up not going anywhere positive. He's not a quarterback that I like in those 3rd and 12 situations. I actually would not be surprised if this team runs a lot of give-up plays in those situations just to not turn the ball over. Geno is a guy who has proven over the last year plus he's been here that he's actually pretty good at protecting the football. And I think he's going to continue to protect the football, maybe even excessively sometimes, which means you get into 3rd and 4, maybe even 3rd and 6, 3rd and 2, things can be okay. But you get into 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, you're going to have him second-guessing himself a little bit. You're going to have him being nervous in the pocket, waiting for routes to develop down the field. And you're going to have him getting sacked, running backwards, throwing the ball away, not getting the ball out when he should. And then that's when the bad things can happen. So my number one key in this game on offense, no negative plays, or very few negative plays. Don't put us in the wrong down and distance. With the offense we have this year, we can move the ball, we can score, but it's also the kind of offense where one bad play can just murder the drive. One holding penalty, and you may as well just punt on 1st and 20. One false start, and the odds of you scoring just went down into like the single digits percentage-wise. So you keep away from those things. We got a great microcosm of this in the Dallas game. Geno's leading us down the field. Running game's clicking. We get down to the 1, except there's a holding penalty. Bring it back. And from there, the drive only goes backwards. So that's an opportunity where we could have scored a touchdown, but the penalty happens. It puts Geno in a bad spot. He runs backwards into a terrible sack, and then it's just chaos. So avoid that. Run the ball a lot. Run the ball effectively. Run the ball. Challenge the middle of that defense. I'm not seeing a big space eater, a big trash can full of dirt in the trenches. I'm not seeing the inside linebacker that can challenge us every single snap. Do what Pete Carroll loves to do. And then next week we can reevaluate when we're playing a different team. But against this team, I like the idea of pounding up the middle. And then when Denver's up, it's hard to know what to make of Denver's offense right now because they didn't play Wilson and some other key players at all in the preseason, and they have a new coach. And this goes for their whole team, by the way. They have a new coach. They're implementing new offensive things and, frankly, new defensive things as well. Now, those defensive changes may end up being in the negative because they lost Vic Fangio, one of the best defensive minds in the NFL right now. But offensively, it should be an improvement. Adding a guy like Nathaniel Hackett, who I'm not in love with, at least he comes from a very established tree of offensive minds. That McVay type, that Shanahan type, that kind of stuff. Strictly speaking, he was under LaFleur last year, but it all kind of stems from that Shanahan type tree. So it should be a good deal more intricate and a good deal more dynamic than what you have seen from the Broncos in the past. And because of that, it's hard to know what you're going to get. In the preseason, Denver, the first 2 preseason games, they ran the ball terribly. Less than 2 yards a carry, one of the worst rushing attacks in the entire NFL. And the last game, they ran the ball well. So that being said, they didn't play their starting running backs at all either, I believe. I don't think I saw Javonte Williams out there. And I don't even know if I saw Melvin Gordon. But it's just really hard to evaluate what they're going to be because they didn't show anything in the preseason. And that's one thing that we should be able to take advantage of, right? Wilson didn't play at all in the preseason, so he's going straight from training camp and practice to a real live NFL game. That's something that Gino's not going to have to worry about because he played in the 3 preseason games. So hopefully that's something you can take advantage of. We see it in the NFL sometimes. These guys who don't play in the preseason, they come out and they show you that they could have used that preseason time to get warm. Now, there are trade-offs. Later in the season, you might be a little better, but early on, it could be a problem. But offhand, just thinking about this game in a general sense, in terms of what they have versus what we have, ignoring the preseason thing, they've got good receivers, although their depth is being tested. Jerry Jeudy's good, Cortland Sutton's good, but they're down Tim Patrick. KJ Hamler will probably play, but he is injured, so who knows how effective he'll be. They don't have great stuff at tight end, so they're Albert Oguwamnam. I'm just going to say Albert O. Had a pretty decent year last year, but he's not great. So they do have great receivers on the top end, and even though they don't have great depth, I will say our secondary against those receivers is probably not a matchup that we want to be challenging too often. So it's going to be on the pass rush to find a way against a decent Denver line to make hay. The good news is when I say the Denver line is decent, I mostly mean in run blocking. Last year, they were pretty good running the ball. They were pretty good run blocking. They generally have graded out well as run blockers. But in terms of pass blocking, they actually graded out pretty poorly last year, and there hasn't been a lot of turnover from last season. Now, a guy like Quinn Miners is a year older. He's in his 2nd year now. He may get better. But you also have guys like Garrett Balls, who is probably capped out and actually probably peaked his contract year a couple years ago. You have guys like Billy Turner, who might be playing injured anyway, and even if he isn't, has probably capped out. So with all that being said, there's a lot riding on Darrell Taylor and Nwosu's ability to get into the backfield and disrupt, because our secondary, filled with young guys, rookies, and unknowns, it's going to be difficult for them to make plays. It's going to be difficult for them to hold up against those receivers. I know Jerry Jeudy hasn't had that big dominant year in the NFL yet, but I believe he is capable. And Sutton, he's put up big seasons, or at least one big season actually, without really good quarterback play. So he's legit. He's the real deal. My interesting question for this game really is, how is the run game going to go? Because if Denver can't run the ball, then that puts you in a very advantageous situation as the Seahawks defense, where you are free to really rush Wilson, and you can rush from all different angles. You can blitz, you can send Jamal, you can send inside linebackers, you can send cornerbacks even, you can throw exotic stuff at him, creative stuff at him that we know he's not very good at handling. When he has to think about things pre-snap, that's when you see Wilson's effectiveness drop off. The teams that really give him hard times in the pre-snap area are the teams that stifle him. So if you can take away their run game, which, like I said, was not effective in the preseason at all, but generally speaking should be pretty good with Javonte Williams and some of their offensive linemen being graded out well as pass blockers in the past, run blockers in the past. If you can find a way, then that's most of the battle right there. And losing a guy like a Bobby Wagner, I'm not going to say they were huge parts of your run defense, but I would throw in guys like Dunlap, Kerry Hyder, and maybe even Benson Mayowa, guys who gave you some pretty decent burn last year on the defensive line. Switching to this new defense, having Cody Barton out there, how good are you going to be against the run? I've already predicted we're going to fall off. In a game like this, it could matter a lot that you don't fall off. So if we can find a way to plug up the run against Denver, then I believe we can force Wilson into the situations where you get the bad stuff. And that's how we win. And All that being said, breaking down that game, and there's more I could say too. Like our special teams, I'm terrified of because we have a new long snapper. We just brought him in, so I'm really, really hoping that that doesn't end up costing us this game. But looking at it theoretically, it easily could. I could talk about some of the other stuff going on with this team, like no Alton Robinson, so we've got Daryl Johnson, who we just brought in and apparently like. He's going to get involved. Little things like that are going to be hard to really identify as points of concern or interest until the game starts. Like I said, there's just something in this game that's hard to quantify right now because of the emotions going into it. How is everybody going to deal with it? How are all the involved parties going to deal with the fact that they're playing their old quarterback, or in Wilson's case, he's playing his old team in Seattle? That part is hard to know, but I will say this. One thing I can say, Denver has a better roster than us. I'm pretty confident they do. I'm not sure if it's a great roster the way some people are painting it out to be, but it's a better roster than ours. They're a better team than us. They probably will have a better season by a few wins at least. But I don't think this game, but some way, somehow, I don't think this game is going to be boring. I don't think this game is going to be a runaway win for Denver. I don't think this game is going to be uninteresting by halftime. I don't think Seahawks fans are going to be leaving the stadium by the late third quarter. It's going to find a way to be compelling going late into the fourth. It's just going to find a way, even if it doesn't make total sense theoretically. And I don't know if it actually doesn't or not, but even if it doesn't, this is just the kind of game where some interesting stuff happens. It ends up being fairly evenly fought, even if the way it gets there is kind of weird. And we're going to come away from this game thinking whoever wins, it was just a couple plays for one side or a couple plays for the other side. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't think we win this game. I think Denver wins by one score, like 23-17 Denver, maybe 23-20 even. But with that comes the knowledge that if we do lose by a score like that, we are going to come away late Monday night and Tuesday thinking to ourselves, we were just one or two plays away. If that guy catches the ball, if that guy makes the tackle, if that guy does this, if that guy throws the ball there instead of there, we win. Just one or two plays it all comes down to. So maybe we find a way to make those one or two plays. And that's all it takes for us to turn a loss into a win. I'm open to it. I think this game is going to find a way to be compelling and competitive, find a way to make those one or two extra plays, and you could end up on top. All right, that's all I got for this one. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And tonight, we're going to find out some interesting stuff. But I'll say one more thing about this. And I want to kind of commit to saying this, actually, before I end the video here. I want to commit to getting this point across because I think it's important. Pete Carroll coached Russell Wilson for 10 years. Coached him every day in practice. Had him on the sideline for every snap he took as a player in the NFL, except for like the Pro Bowl and garbage like that. Knows everything about him. Should know everything there is to know about him. And Pete Carroll is a defensive-minded coach. That is why he's going into the Hall of Fame. He is a elite, historically defensive coach. Last few years, his defenses have been up and down, but he is a defensive-minded coach. We all know that. So if Pete Carroll, the defensive guru, goes up against a quarterback that he coached for the last 10 years and can't at least find a way to make life hard for him, can't at least find a way to slow him down, make him make some mistakes so that your mediocre at best offense can stay in the game. I'm not talking about winning, but staying in the game, making it competitive. Then what are you doing? What is it that you actually do around here if you can't find a way to do that? That's what I'm saying here. So if Wilson tears us up tonight, then I'm going to come on here later and talk about it. But that's the bottom line to me. That's why I think this game will be close. You've coached this guy for 10 years. If he rolls into Seattle week 1, the first game he plays after you trade him, and you can't stop him and he destroys you, then that says something really, really bad about you as a coach. And I know you don't have the greatest defense in the world. I know you don't have the greatest personnel. I know we're turning the page. It doesn't matter. As a coach, you got to find some way to make life hard for him. And if you lose anyway because your offense isn't very good, then so be it. But if Wilson tears us up, I'm going to be very irritated, not just because he tore us up, but because what does that say about what the job Pete did preparing for this game? You understand what gives him trouble. Exotic blitzes, making him think pre-snap, making him throw short, making him throw over the middle. If you can't force him to do that, and you can't force him to make mistakes in those areas, then, yeah, what do you do around here? All right, I'm actually done now, but I had to convey that. I had to convey that before I got out of here. All right. See you guys later tonight after the game. Go Hawks.